Hi guys, Zasmo here, and today I want to talk a little bit about how people are getting baited into playing pretty bad builds in Diablo. People are basically making so many very fundamental build making mistakes that I want to talk about it and try to help you navigate between good builds and bad builds, how to recognize them and how to look at the game and just cut through the bullshit, right? So a little preface to that, I'm going to be playing a marksman rogue build, and in the previous video I talked about how I think this is going to be the fastest build basically in the game, at least until we get to very hard super endgame content. And there's a few reasons for that. One of the reasons is basically that we get so much movement speed everywhere, more than any other build can possibly get, even if we don't count any movement speed on gear like boots or amulet or anything like that. So we get so much movement speed, and then we're using a ranged playstyle and we're using dash as a cooldown, which is a very powerful ability. So why is this faster than something like, for example, Twisting Blades Rogue, right? So I'm gonna show you how basically this is gonna work. So let's say you have like a pack of monsters, okay? So you got a pack of monsters, and then there is you, okay? And you're just chilling and you're running this way, okay? So what are you gonna do when you're playing Twisting Blades, right? So when you're playing Twisting Blades, your play pattern is gonna look something like this. You're gonna run up and then you're gonna shadow step, right? You're just gonna shadow step to this guy. Then you're gonna maybe use an imbuement or whatever. As you're running up, you can just use imbuement, whatever, doesn't matter. Then you're gonna hit this guy with Twisting Blades. Then you're gonna dash out, right? So you're gonna dash away from this. Then maybe you're gonna evade so that it hits everything, because the monsters are gonna chase you. They're gonna align in a nice line. This is gonna hit you. And then you're gonna dash again and just continue on your way, right? So that's how it's gonna look like. But by the time you do this, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna shoot them and then dash and then dash and then shoot the next pack. Okay, that's the difference. So I'm basically just gonna use the penetrating shot, which is gonna split to the sides as well, right? So it's gonna cover this entire pack. It's also gonna spawn the Rain of Storm stuff from my aspect, right? Which is a guaranteed aspect that you can get from a dungeon. And it's just gonna kill the pack, and I'm just gonna run. That's what I need to do the damage, right? And I can use a dash just purely for mobility, just to keep moving. And I can use the dash beforehand to be a little bit further, make the monsters clump up a little bit while chasing me, then shoot, and then that also means that the skill is gonna be buffed from one of the Paragon glyphs that I have, and then I dash and then I run, right? So this is just fundamentally way faster way to play. And it might not look at like that, right? Because people basically look at the gameplay and they see crazy ninja stuff, right? They see the Twisting Blades rogue just jump in and just shadow step, dash, evade, the blades are falling back, and then you dash, right? And it looks really cool, looks really fast, but you haven't really moved, right? You're still staying here while you're doing all of those things, so you're not really moving. So your clear speed is actually not that fast. Your character is moving quickly, but your clear speed is not that fast. So that's number one mistake, right? People are not looking at the actual clear speed. People are just looking at how quickly is the character moving, which is an important part of it. And if your character wasn't moving very fast, then that would be a completely terrible playstyle. But there is a lot more to this, and you want to look at it for kind of zoom out a little bit, look at it from the outside perspective, how quickly you actually are moving through the dungeon or area you're in, and so on, right? So that's the first point. The second way that people bait themselves is using too many utility skills. So instead of using utility skills, you'll notice that in my build, for example, I'm using penetrating shot and I'm using rapid fire. Why? Because this is by far the best clear speed skill for clearing packs, and this is by far the best single target skill, right? I'm not compromising on single target, I'm not compromising on clear speed, I'm getting maximum of both. But what I'm compromising on is using an extra ability, like a shadow step, right? Because that would not help me. I don't really want to jump to the monsters, and if I do, I'll just use dash, right? So I don't need the shadow step, it is useless. We are also dropping the dark shards because we can generate them without the ability. So we're getting concealment as a defensive ability. So I have one defensive cooldown, one mobility cooldown, 1 damage cooldown, and then damage abilities that synergize very well to give me maximum clear speed and maximum, basically maximum damage, right? There is no reason to have like 2 abilities that will be doing a single target damage that you like alternate, right? Like there is no reason for me to have rapid fire and barrage, or penetrating shot and barrage. There's no reason to do stuff like that, right? There is also no reason for me to use any of the traps, right? Unless I'm playing a build that is specializing in traps. I think the trap build is actually going to be one of the best builds in terms of like how comfortable it's going to play and how quick it's going to be, but you need to be geared for that. It needs to be very well thought out. It needs to be tested in practice, because the traps build, I don't think it's something you can really do on paper. You cannot really know how it's gonna work in practice, because it depends on like when do the grenades drop when you press your evade cooldown and they automatically drop, and how effective is that when doing damage and so on. There's gonna be a lot more that goes into it. So I elect to not go into any of those things. I use 1 imbuement as well. You can use 2 imbuements, but the imbuements have purpose, right? So this is just the maximum damage that I can be dealing. There is no like other reason that I'm gonna have to do something extra, right? Basically, I'm doing this all at the same time. I'm either clearing or fighting a boss. I don't have any other like random useless things, right? I don't have like, oh, sometimes, but what if I like, CC is also like so overrated, because you cannot CC everything, right? You cannot aim at everything. Like, while you're trying to aim and CC, like this is not gonna be up all the time, right? So not being able to CC monsters all the time means that if you rely on your, like for your survivability on the CC, that's a bad idea, right? Because if you cannot do it 100% of the time, then they're gonna hit you. And if you need the CC to survive, then you're gonna be dying when it's down. And if you don't need it, then why are you using it in the first place, right? So that's why I think like focusing on CC is actually not that good of an idea, unless you can just very, very consistently just permanently keep the monsters CC'd, either dazed or frozen or whatever, so that they cannot actually hit you, and then you slowly whittle them down. But then there's the problem that you're actually killing them slower instead of killing them faster. Instead of investing in damage, right, and killing them faster, if you're playing softcore at least, which I think is going to be the better approach. And then we've got things like the ultimate skills, which you're going to press this and you're going to do slightly more damage than you would be doing into like a fully invested ability, but it's going to cost you like a full, like a hotkey, right? It's going to cost you like a full skill that you're going to sacrifice. So that's why I don't really believe in that. I think you should, first of all, like your number 1 priority is to pick a skill, like 1 skill for clear and 1 skill for single target. If it can be the same skill, that's great. But sometimes it cannot be the same skill, so you just have to pick 2 skills. And then you invest into them everything. You invest everything into the same skill. So all of my scaling fully supports both of those, by the way, except for the trick shot aspect, which doesn't support the rapid fire, right? So the trick shot is for the clear. But the poison imbuement is going to help me clear with penetrating shot and trick shot, and it's going to help my single target damage, right? So I'm scaling poison for both. I'm scaling vulnerable for both. I'm scaling the physical damage, like damage taken by enemies. I'm scaling the crit for both, right? So I'm just putting everything into one basket. And when you're doing that, you're multiplying the numbers larger and larger. So because we have so many multipliers in this game, and we don't know exactly how the multipliers work, but we have a lot of them, right? There's lots of different multiplicative like damage modifiers that are going to basically scale the damage up and up. And you've seen, even if in the level 25 beta, people were able to, when they invested so much into one skill, and they were playing Barbarian, which had access to more weapon slots, so it scales the damage more. When you put all eggs in one basket, you can get like ridiculous amounts of damage, right? And it's going to be basically like a difference between you doing, I don't know, you doing like, let's just say arbitrary numbers, right? If I do like 100 damage and you're doing like 30 damage, then you need the defense, right? But because you need like, let's say 80 damage to one-shot the monsters. But if you're doing the 100, then you're fine, you're one-shotting the monsters, and you just don't have to invest into the defense, and it just can be faster, right? So focusing on one mechanic, like very, very hard, and scaling that one mechanic very, very hard. In this case, it is crit poison, right? So crit and poison. The crit is benefiting my poison. The crit is benefiting my damage. The poison is benefiting all of my skills, so it all scales together toward like one goal, right? Vulnerable is increasing all my damage, poison is increasing all my damage, crit is increasing all my damage, and the skill that benefits from that the most is the skill that deals the most damage for me, right? And that's how you want to make your character. You don't want to spread between like so many different abilities and try to use them in synergy. Like that's a fairy tale. That's for noobs. That's not how things work. You're gonna end up with one ability or two abilities that are gonna be doing way more damage than anything else that you have, right? That's why we're not putting really points in puncture, because it's useless, right? It's like in comparison to how much damage a poison imbued rapid fire is gonna do with all this increased crit damage and so on, it's the puncture is gonna do nothing. The puncture is there just to apply the vulnerable and to get your combo points as quickly as possible so that you can just nuke and melt things with rapid fire, right? So, and that's gonna basically apply to every single class. Like you're gonna see so many shitty builds with people trying to fit so many different abilities instead of getting the most powerful of every single thing, right? Like you wanna get your most powerful mobility, get your most powerful single target, get your most powerful clear, and get your most powerful defense, right? If you set up your character like that, then you have like 2 flex slots. Make sure it's something that synergizes. So for me, since I focus on the damage, it's gonna be something that buffs my damage, right? This buffs my main single target, and this buffs my main single target, right? So I'm basically putting all eggs in one basket, and I'm just getting the most powerful things from the other things, like from defense and from mobility. So this is something that I highly recommend. Another thing that I've seen that people make a mistake of is they don't really know what they're doing in terms of their priorities, right? So you have to have very clear priorities. If you're playing hardcore, your number one priority is to not die, right? So you set up your character so you cannot die, and then you get the damage, right? If you're playing softcore, for me at least, my number one priority is clear speed, right? So I want my clear speed to be as fast as possible. That's the only thing I basically care about. I don't care if I die from time to time, as long as I'm not dying frequently. I just want the bare minimum of defense, and I know I can navigate this like pretty competently from someone who's experienced of playing games, so I don't need to build my character very tanky, and I'm gonna verify that of course in practice, right? Maybe we're gonna need to make it tanky, but my first approach is get as much movement speed as possible, as much mobility as possible. So it's really surprising to me when people are playing a build and like people are playing rogue and they're not scaling crit, they're not going for movement speed from the boots, but they're going for the movement speed from something else. Or like I've seen people get movement speed on this, like critical strikes grant movement speed. They get it on the boots, but they don't get the stutter step. 15% movement speed for 3 points is so little, right? Or they get the crit chance here instead of getting the movement speed here, which is not gonna be up all the time, right? Like you also are losing a whole like skill slot on a bar. So there's so much like disjointed like build making, where people are making a build where they're like, okay, so I'm gonna get this dash, like this point in dash, by the way, that I have here increases critical strike damage. It's giving me some crit damage, but basically there's nothing else that I can pick that is useful at this point. But people are picking like dash with this, so you're gonna dash and slow enemies, and then you're gonna shadow step, and then you're gonna have these stun the enemies, and then you're gonna throw the trap at them, the grenade, and then you're gonna use caltropes, and then you're gonna hit them, and then you're gonna debuff them. And it's like so many different things. By the time you do all of your like combo, the first thing that you try to apply to the monster is already gonna expire, right? So try to focus, like if you're gonna take anything from this video, just try to focus on 1 or 2 skills and max them out as much as possible. Make every single part of your build work for those, like this 1 or 2 skills, depending on the build, right? Like if you're playing Sork, for example, if you're playing Barbarian, like there might be just 1 skill that you're using that is the core skill, and 1 basic skill, right? Maybe you don't need 2. Marksman Rogue, I'm very certain, needs 2 skills in order to shine, because just rapid fire deals insane damage compared to penetrating shot when it comes to single target, just absolutely melts bosses, but it doesn't have as good of a clear. However, there is a world in which you could clear with rapid fire, with different tech, with different aspects, with different imbuement, but just to maximize single target and the clear speed, this is, I think, the best. If you're interested in the build itself, you can check out my previous video, but hopefully I helped you a little bit in figuring out how to look at a build and which builds are actually going to be good for leveling quickly and which things are a bait. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.